In this video, we will take a closer look at what positivism is. It is not possible to summarize positivism in a simple way, as it has developed in different ways since Comte. But positivism can at least be described as a philosophical movement that emphasizes that the only way we can say anything of value about the world, that is, the only way we can gain useful knowledge about the world, it is by observing it and thus gaining experience about it. Here a distinction is sometimes made between a priori and a posteriori arguments, which we can find in the thinking of the philosopher Immanuel Kant. And he developed this in particular in the Critique of Pure Reason from 1781. In the book, Kant argued that a priori statement is one that does not need to be proven by experience. Statements like all bachelors are unmarried or 7 + 5 = 12 are therefore not subject to any conflict but are self-evident and therefore beyond doubt. I therefore do not need to check whether it is true because the logical premises of the statement make it impossible to think differently about it. Sure, my experience is relevant to understanding what these claims mean, but once the basic foundation for understanding the statements is established, I have no reason to question them. An a posteriori claim, according to Kant, is one that requires experience to determine whether it is reasonable. If I were to suggest that all bachelors are unhappy, there is reason to question the claim as self-evident. We can imagine that there are several bachelors that are not unhappy, and by finding out what the actual situation is, we can perhaps ask some bachelors if they are unhappy. We can then learn whether the claim is reasonable. What we can argue through Kant is that positivism, as a philosophical school of thought, gives priority to knowledge based on a posteriori claims. That is, it is interested in the world that can be investigated and therefore experienced, not the world that we cannot question and therefore does not need to be experienced. Positivism does not necessarily question a priori statements. They are not always understood as lies, untruths, or fallacies. Positivists believe that 7 + 5 = 12. At the same time, they warn against never critically examining a priori statements. Accordingly, a priori claims are not necessarily given truths. For example, that God's laws govern the world is not a given. Instead, by observing the world, one can learn that other laws, so-called natural laws, govern the world, which challenge notions of God's omnipotence. Positivism thus challenges the basis of how we obtain knowledge of what is true by prioritizing experience as the basis for obtaining knowledge. Given the modern myth of progress and its basis in a critique of arbitrariness and religious authority, a distinctive feature of positivism is also objectivity. One question that becomes relevant is how to prevent our experience of what we are investigating from being influenced by our personal whims, beliefs, and vices. That becomes a real priority. We all carry a priori assumptions about the world and life that are based on our social and cultural upbringing and identity. So to prevent these from influencing our experience, we must therefore develop methods and practices that allow us to seek objective experiences. So, this is where modern science becomes important. The development of the scientific method has created the conditions for experiencing the world in a way that is based on positive data about the world. The emphasis is thus on empirical evidence and observation. By emphasizing systematic and logical reasoning, we can thus argue that positivism contributes to the development of modern science. But how did it affect education? To that we turn to in the next video.